Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 3 NFL Power Rankings. So, starting off by briefly recapping last week's rankings and what those teams did in Week 2. Last week at number 10, I had the Broncos. They lost to the Colts 29-28. Ninth was the Lions. They destroyed the Bears 52-21. Eighth was the Chargers. They beat the Raiders 20-9. Seventh was the Buccaneers. They beat the Texans 20-19. Sixth was the Commanders. They lost to the Packers 27-18. Fifth was the Chiefs. They lost to the Eagles 20-17. Fourth was the Ravens. They easily beat the Browns 41-17. Third was the Packers. They defeated the Commanders 27-18. Second was the Eagles. They knocked off the Chiefs 20-17. And first was the Bills. They beat the Jets easily 30-10. But getting into this week's rankings, beginning things at number 10, I've got the Chiefs. So the Chiefs, they fall to number 10 after they lost the Eagles 20-17. And they're now 0-2 on the season, and it's the first year they've started 0-2 since 2014. But this wasn't a great game for the Chiefs. Their offense didn't play that well. Patrick Mahomes was solid, throwing for 187 yards, a touchdown, and an interception that wasn't his fault. Plus he ran for 66 yards and another score, but outside of Mahomes, the offense was bad. They had no run game, and the Chiefs, they really need someone to step up at receiver, especially now that Travis Kelce decided he's going to drop passes at the goal line. Then the defense of the Chiefs was a lot better this week than they were in Week 1. They did a good job of slowing down the Eagles' run game, and they allowed just 3.7 yards per play. But the Chiefs' offense wasn't good enough, and that is the big reason they lost. But this is a Chiefs team that is still really good despite being 0-2, so that is why I still have them ranked number 10, but if you want to have them a few spots lower, I wouldn't hate it. Ninth, I have the Colts. So the Colts, they enter my rankings at number 9, and they've gone off to a great start, and they're coming off a 29-28 win over the Broncos on a walk-off field goal. Now, the Colts really should have lost this game because they originally missed the field goal, but then there was a leverage penalty called, which pretty much never gets called, giving them a second chance, which obviously made the field goal. But, I mean, the Colts, they still won the game. The offense for the Colts was great once again. Daniel Jones threw for 316 yards and a touchdown, and he's actually second in the NFL in passing yards after 2 weeks, only behind Russell Wilson. I'm not sure who saw that coming. But Jones, he played well, and the Colts, they also ran the ball extremely effectively, as Jonathan Taylor ran for 165 yards. Then defensively for the Colts, they were okay. They allowed 28 points and 324 total yards. But this was a win for the Colts. They're now 2-0 on the season for the first time since 2009. Now, I'm still not completely sold on the Colts as a good team, because just last year we saw the Saints start 2-0, and then they finished the year 5-12. But the Colts, they've looked great so far, and I've got them ranked number 9. Eighth, I have the Commanders. So the Commanders, they fall a couple spots to number 8 after they lost to the Packers 27-18. And the Commanders did not play their best game. Their offense really was not good and couldn't get anything going until the fourth quarter, and Jaden Daniels looked off. He completed just 57% of his passes for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then outside of Jaden Daniels, the offense was awful. They had no run game, which is 51 rushing yards, and the offensive line also struggled, allowing 4 sacks. Then the defense for the Commanders also wasn't very good. They couldn't stop the run or stop the pass, and allowed over 400 yards of offense. But this was not a good game for the Commanders. Because of that, they lost their first game of the season. They're now 1-1, and I have them falling to number 8 in my power rankings. Seventh, I've got the Chargers. So the Chargers, they move up a spot after they beat the Raiders by a score of 20-9, and this was another good win for the Chargers. Justin Herbert played well, throwing for 242 yards and 2 scores, and wide receiver Quentin Johnston was good once again, with 3 catches for 71 yards and a touchdown. Now, the run game for the Chargers wasn't great, which is 81 yards and 3.1 yards per carry, but luckily for the Chargers, they threw the ball very well. Then the defense of the Chargers, they were also great. They didn't allow a single touchdown, forcing the Raiders to settle for 3 field goals, and they also picked off Geno Smith 3 times. But a good win for the Chargers, and I've got them at number 7. Sixth, I've got the Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers enter at number 6 after a 20-19 win over the Texans. And this was a solid game for the Buccaneers. It wasn't their best game, but they played well enough to be a pretty solid Texans team. But the Buccaneers offense was okay. They put up 20 points, although weren't that good in the second half until their game-winning touchdown drive. But Baker Mayfield played pretty well. He had 215 yards and 2 touchdowns, and also made some big plays with his legs. And the running back Bucky Irving, he had a good game, finishing with 121 scrimmage yards. Now, the offensive line wasn't good for the Buccaneers, allowing 4 sacks, but they were also facing a great Texans pass rush, plus they were playing with their backups at both left tackle and right tackle. So they'll get a little bit of a pass right there. But then the defense for the Buccaneers, they played pretty well. They allowed just 19 points, got consistent pressure on CJ Stroud, and that was a big reason they won the game. But the Buccaneers, after a solid win over the Texans, I've got them at number 6. Getting into the top 5, at number 5, I've got the Lions. So the Lions, they move up to number 5 after they blew out the Bears 52-21. And this was a great bounce-back win for the Lions. Their offense looked great this week, putting up 52 points after they scored just 13 points in Week 1. And this is actually the Lions' third 50-point game since the start of last season. But Jared Goff, he played really well, throwing for 334 yards and 5 touchdowns. And Amon-Ra St. Brown caught 9 passes for 115 yards and 3 scores. And the Lions, they were also really good on the ground, 177 yards and 2 scores. And then the defense of the Lions, they were also pretty good, allowing 21 points while also getting 4 sacks and forcing a couple turnovers. But after a big bounce-back win for the Lions, they destroyed the Bears, and I've got the Lions at number 5. Fourth, I've got the Ravens. So the Ravens, they've remained at number 4 after they easily beat the Browns 41-17. The Ravens offense got off to a little bit of a slow start with 10 in the first half before they exploded for 31 in the second half. And that is now back-to-back 40-point games for the Ravens to open up this season. But Lamar Jackson, he played well once again, throwing for 225 yards and 4 scores. Although the Ravens, they were surprisingly bad on the ground, which is 45 rushing yards on 2.1 yards per attempt. And then the defense for the Ravens, they also played well. They allowed just 17 points, forced 2 turnovers, and returned one of them for a touchdown. But the Ravens, they picked up their first win of the season, easily beating the Browns, and I've got them at number 4. Third, I have the Packers. So the Packers check in at number 3 after they beat the Commanders 27-18, and they played really well. Their offense looked great, and Jordan Love threw for 292 yards and 2 touchdowns. And tight end Tucker Kraft had a huge game with 6 catches for 124 yards and got in the end zone. And the Packers, they were also good on the ground, rushing for 135 yards and a touchdown. Then the defense for the Packers, they looked great once again. They allowed just 3.5 yards per play and also got 4 sacks. But this is another great performance for the Packers on both sides of the ball. They look like one of the best teams in the NFL so far this year, and I've got them at number 3. Second, I've got the Eagles. So the Eagles, they've remained at number 2 after they beat the Chiefs in a Super Bowl rematch 20-17. Although this win for the Eagles didn't come without controversy on the tush push at the end of the game, with obviously missed false start, and now it's caused the whole debate of if the tush push should get banned or not. I don't think it should get banned. I just agree with most people who say the tush push just needs to be officiated properly. But this was an okay performance for the Eagles. Their offense wasn't anything too impressive. On the ground, they were okay, running for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns, although averaged just 3.6 yards per attempt. And then throwing the ball, the Eagles were less than impressive, as Jalen Hurts had just 101 passing yards and averaged 4.6 yards per pass attempt. Then the defense for the Eagles, they played pretty well, and they held the Chiefs to just 17 points. They also got a couple sacks and forced a turnover, although that interception was pure luck. But this was an okay game for the Eagles. They still beat a very good Chiefs team despite not playing their best game. And, I mean, they got the win, that's what matters, and I've got the Eagles at number 2. And first, I've got the Bills. So the Bills, they're at number 1 after they dominated the Jets 30-10. And the Bills, they were in control of this game the entire way. They scored on their opening drive, they went 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, 20-3 at halftime, and obviously won the game 30-10. But this was a good game for the Bills. Josh Allen didn't have insanely impressive numbers, throwing for just 148 yards, but the Bills, they were dominant on the ground, as James Cook ran for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns, and the Bills as a team ran for 224 yards and 3 scores on 5.2 yards per carry. And then the defense for the Bills really struggled last week, but they looked much better this week. They allowed just 10 points, 3.3 yards per play, and also got 4 sacks. But this was a dominant win for the Bills, and I've got them remaining at number 1. But those are my Week 3 NFL Power Rankings. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.